Something in you stopped scrolling. Out of thousands of videos, thousands of thumbnails, thousands of voices all competing for your attention, you stopped here. And I don't think that's random. I think some part of you knew you needed to hear this. Maybe you can't explain it. Maybe you don't even fully believe it yet. But stay with me, because what I'm about to share with you might be the most important thing you've heard in a long time. There's a verse in the Bible, Jeremiah 29 verse 11. And if you've seen it on coffee mugs or graduation cards, I need you to forget that version for a moment. Because when you hear where those words actually came from, and what they really mean, something shifts. God says, "For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." Now here's what most people don't know. Those words were not spoken to someone sitting comfortably in a good season of life. They were spoken to a people who had lost everything. Their home, their city, their sense of identity. The ancient Israelites had been taken into captivity in Babylon, a foreign land, a strange place, a life they never chose and never wanted. They were in exile, and into that darkness, into that confusion, God sent them a message through the prophet Jeremiah. He didn't say, "I'll fix this tomorrow." He didn't say, "Your suffering isn't real." He said, "I know the plans I have for you." Not you know, not you can see. I know. And that distinction, that single shift of perspective, is what I want to talk to you about today. Because there's a very good chance that right now, in your life, you are in your own kind of exile. Maybe it doesn't look like ancient Babylon. Maybe it looks like a job you hate, but can't afford to leave. Maybe it looks like a relationship that ended and left you wondering if you'll ever feel whole again. Maybe it looks like a career you've poured years into that still hasn't given you what you thought it would. Maybe it looks like lying awake at 2 a.m. with thoughts that won't quiet down, replaying conversations, second-guessing decisions, wondering if you made a wrong turn somewhere that you can never go back and fix. If any of that sounds familiar, I want you to hear this. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are in the middle of something you can't see the end of yet. Think about how disorienting that is, being in the middle. When you're at the beginning of something, there's excitement, energy, possibility. When you're at the end, there's closure, relief, resolution. But the middle? The middle is where doubt lives. The middle is where you start wondering if the whole thing was a mistake. The middle is where most people give up. Not because things are impossible, but because they can't see far enough ahead to know that it's worth continuing. And here's what the culture we live in makes so much worse. We are surrounded by highlight reels. Social media shows you the before and the after, the struggle post and the glow up, the rock bottom and the comeback. But it almost never shows you the quiet, grinding, confusing middle. The part where nothing is happening. The part where you're just waiting, trying, wondering, showing up even when it doesn't feel like it's making a difference. That middle part, that's where most of real life actually happens. And nobody talks about it. There's a psychological phenomenon that researchers have studied for years called the Valley of Despair. It shows up in learning curves, in grief cycles, in business growth charts, in recovery from addiction. It's that low point right after initial hope fades, before real progress becomes visible. Studies on resilience consistently show that the people who make it through aren't necessarily the strongest or the smartest. They're the ones who held on just a little longer than the moment told them to quit. They stayed in the middle long enough to reach the other side. But here's the thing science can tell you about resilience. And here's the thing faith adds to it. Science can show you the pattern. Faith tells you there's a purpose behind the pattern. That's what this verse is doing. It's not promising you that everything will go the way you planned. Read that again. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. It doesn't say plans to give you exactly what you asked for. It doesn't say plans that make sense to you right now. It says plans that are ultimately for your good. And it says those plans already exist. They are already known, not by you, but by someone who sees the whole picture, beginning to end, in a single moment. Now I know what some of you are thinking. That's easy to say. You don't know what I've been through. And you're right. I don't. But I know this. The people who have come out the other side of the hardest seasons of their lives almost universally say the same thing. They say, I couldn't see it then. But looking back, I needed that. That hard thing made me into the person who was capable of receiving what came next. A job loss that led to a better path. A relationship ending that made room for a real one. A health scare that forced a person to finally start living deliberately instead of just going through the motions. A failure so public and so humiliating that it stripped away the ego and left behind something more real, more grounded, more genuinely human. These aren't feel-good stories. These are testimonies. And they all share the same thread. The thread of a plan that was being woven even when the person couldn't see the loom. Let me ask you something. When's the last time you actually trusted the process? Not just said it, because that phrase has become almost meaningless from overuse. But actually, in your gut, released your grip on the need to control every outcome? Most of us are walking around carrying this invisible weight of trying to manage everything. Our image, our timeline, our security, our reputation. We are exhausted from the effort of trying to make sure nothing goes wrong. And the anxiety that comes from that low-grade, constant, background hum of what if and not yet, and what does that mean? That is the sound of a soul trying to do a job it was never designed to do. You were not designed to see the whole plan. You were designed to trust the one who holds it. That's not weakness. That's not passivity. That's one of the most courageous things a human being can do. Because trust, real trust, requires letting go. It requires saying, I don't understand this chapter, but I believe in the author. And in a world that rewards control, that celebrates self-sufficiency, that says you are the only one you can count on, choosing to believe that there is a larger intelligence, a larger love, a larger purpose at work in your life is genuinely countercultural. And yet the people who do it, the people who actually practice that kind of surrender, consistently report something that all the productivity hacks and self-optimization routines in the world can't replicate. Peace. Real peace. Not the absence of problems. Not the guarantee of good outcomes. But a deep, unshakable sense that they are held. That they are seen. That even in the hardest moment, they are not alone and they are not lost. That's the promise of this verse. Not that your life will be easy. Not that the plans will look the way you imagine them. But that the plans exist. That they are good. That the God who set stars in motion and breathed life into dust has not overlooked you. You, with your specific struggles, your specific doubts, your specific quiet 2 a.m. fears, you are known. You are planned for. So what does this actually mean for Monday morning? What does it mean for the hard conversation you've been putting off, the decision you're paralyzed by, the season you can't seem to get out of? It means this: do the next right thing. Not the whole thing. Not the perfect thing. The next right thing. The Israelites in Babylon were told to plant gardens, to build houses, to seek the peace of the city they were in. In other words, be present, be faithful, be useful, right where you are, even in a place you didn't choose and don't want to be. Because faithfulness in the middle is what prepares you for what's on the other side. Stop waiting to feel ready. Stop waiting for certainty before you move. Stop waiting for the anxiety to disappear before you start living. The courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to walk forward anyway, with the belief that the path you can't see is still holding you. Write down one thing today that you've been postponing because you're not sure it will work out. One step, one conversation, one application, one honest prayer, just one act of faith that says, I don't have to see the whole road. I just have to take the next step. Because here's the truth that this verse has been whispering to people across thousands of years of human history, across every kind of loss and confusion and longing imaginable. You are not an accident. Your story is not a mistake. The hard part you're in right now is not the end. And the God who knows the number of hairs on your head and the thoughts you haven't spoken out loud, that God has a plan for you that is better than anything you could engineer for yourself. You just have to stop white-knuckling your life long enough to let it unfold. So here's my final question for you. What if you stopped asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and started asking, "What is this preparing me for?" That one shift, that single reframe, can change everything. Because it moves you from victim to student, from stranded to in transit, from lost to en route. You didn't click this video by accident. Maybe you needed the reminder that the middle of the story is not the end of the story. Maybe you needed someone to say out loud what you've been hoping in secret, that you are not forgotten, that your life has a purpose, and that the silence you've been hearing from heaven is not absence. It's the quiet of something being carefully, specifically, lovingly built. Trust the plan you can't see yet. It's better than you know.